Migration doesn't stop. Tragedy is happening daily.
So who is left to pick up these people at sea?
They could have bought Ferraris, yachts, whatever, but they decided to take that money and put it into going out into the ocean and picking up people who are drowning.
Watch out, sit down.
It's not a crazy investment if you think that you save all these people, all this life.
I think it would be too easy for some people just to write checks for someone else to do what is definitely a core function of the state.
Just because you're the smartest guy in the room doesn't mean that you're trying to make a profit every moment.
The search for hundreds of migrants is underway. Dozens have been confirmed dead, sparking fears for what could become the Mediterranean's deadliest known migrant sea disaster.
This spring, the migrant crisis in the Mediterranean made international headlines when a ship carrying 700 migrants capsized during a botched rescue attempt.
What are officials doing now to save the lives of migrants trying to cross the Mediterranean, and are they doing enough?
The tragedy drew the world's attention to a problem nobody seems to want to solve, because solving it means bringing even more migrants into the European Union. But doing nothing isn't an option either, because it means thousands of people will drown in the sea at Europe's doorstep. Over 2,000 have drowned this year alone. In the face of government inaction, one private organization has stepped in to provide assistance to the thousands of people fleeing conflict and economic hardship in the Middle East and Africa. It's called Migrant Offshore Aid Station, or MOAS, and it was founded by a 33-year-old American millionaire and his Italian wife. MOAS is unique because it's doing what you would expect a country's navy or a coast guard to do. It's a ship that literally cruises the sea looking for distressed boats to rescue.
So I gotta find north, right?
Meet Chris Catrambone. Chris made his fortune servicing insurance claims for military contractors during the American wars in Iraq and Afghanistan.
We were paid to go and rescue people. Now we're paying to go and rescue people.
Right.
This is Chris's wife, Regina. She says she got the idea for MOAS when she was on a cruise with Chris in the Mediterranean.
We spot a floating jacket, was a winter jacket, in the water. This jacket belonged probably to one of the person that didn't make it. So my husband started to search the market to find the boat that could fulfill the need of our mission.
She's a former fishing trawler. They used to keep her catch a fish down below, so we've got quite a bit of room here.
It's called Phoenix, and Chris spared no cost in tricking it out with state-of-the-art toys. From the military-class drones, to the top-of-the-line communications technology, to the Navy SEAL-style rescue boats. MOAS also invited the medical charity Doctors Without Borders to perform medical aid from an onboard infirmary. They contributed 1.7 million euros and 6 tons of medical supplies. So what's this?
This is the Belize flag. This is the flag that we fly on Phoenix.
Flag of convenience?
No, it's a flag of acceptance, I think. Looks like I'm a whiter guy and a blacker guy on here, so it kind of makes sense for Phoenix.
We pay taxes in our countries. They go to the Navy, and they go to the Coast Guard. Shouldn't these organizations, which have a much wider reach than an NGO like yours, be doing these jobs in a professional manner?
They are doing the job in a professional manner, but it's not enough. We feel that we are a needed plug at the moment because there's nothing else out there.
MOAS operates out of Malta, a tiny island nation of 400,000 people, which sits at the front lines of the Mediterranean migrant crisis. This year alone, 70,000 people have boarded unseaworthy boats and set sail from the Libyan coast with not much more than a prayer and a heading. Smugglers usually don't even give them enough fuel to reach the EU, so if the boats aren't rescued, it could mean a death sentence. That's where MOAS comes in. But its emergence raises the question of whether contractors could play a role in search and rescue. MOAS told us that they were ready to accept government funding, so could the EU simply pay MOAS to do the work that's politically unpopular? We wanted to gauge how ready countries of the EU were to move in that direction, so we spoke to Malta's Prime Minister.
No problem.
Projects like MOAS are in some ways plugging the gap left by the EU government. Do you see private companies or individuals or NGOs
taking on more of this burden in the future, perhaps even being funded by the European Union to do this job for them?
Look, I think that what private individuals do in order to give a signal is very important. But I, for one, think that states should not abdicate their responsibilities on this issue, definitely. So whatever resources private companies or NGOs would devote to all this, it should not be an excuse for any government not to do anything.
In the same way that the United States government outsourced a large part of its military operation in Iraq to private companies.
It isn't the best of comparisons when you compare the results that were achieved in Iraq.
No, but it seems like it's heading that way. With the governments not doing anything, private individuals are coming into the picture, and they're already planning their expansion and hoping for aid from the governments.
When it comes to saving lives and the crucial role of security and safety at sea, I think it would be too easy for some people just to write checks for someone else to do what is definitely a core function of the state.
So far, it seems like the only ones writing any checks are private citizens. Chris and Regina have committed $8 million of their own money and profits from their company Tangiers Group to make MOAS a reality. We're going to go visit the Tangiers office. It's Chris and Regina's company, which is a multi-million-dollar global operation, but it's based here in Malta. The company is essentially a medical insurance business that caters to clients in far-flung and dangerous places.
I come from these boots.
Yeah.
It's very nice heel boots, and Christopher come from these other boots. It's more like a snow boots.
Louisiana. Yeah.
Yes, it's different boots.
Chris told me that you spent $8 million so far on the MOAS project. It's a really crazy investment.
No, it's not a crazy investment. If you think that you save all these people, all this life, is not a crazy investment. We did what we could do with our resources. I wish I have more.
MOAS saved 3,000 lives last year when it launched, and this year it's already saved over 5,000. So what's the EU been doing? In 2014, Italy shut down its costly search and rescue program, Mare Nostrum, because the EU refused to fund it. Then, over 1,700 people died in early 2015, according to Amnesty International. When MOAS launched for a second season in May, it was pretty much the only game in town.
Private initiative probably can come up with ideas and concepts faster than the EU government can.
Robert Young-Pelton is a writer steering MOAS's PR campaign. He's contributed some stories to Vice in the past and is the founder of Migrant Report, which tracks the movement of migrants across the Mediterranean.
The volume is startling to Europe because they're just now starting to see thousands and thousands of people in the sea. So it's an education process for Europe, and it's not going to stop.
And that's why it's such a touchy subject for European politicians. The fact is, immigration is unpopular. Do you see, governments maybe hiring MOAS or groups like it to take the political risk off of their hands so that the rescue goes to professionals and provide it as a service?
Yeah, I think the way things should work is that individuals should look at something and say, I can fix that. And then secondly, other individuals should look at that and say, I like what he's doing. I think governments are at the tail end of the decision chain. Governments are risk adverse. Governments look at polls. They're not about to go out on a limb and do something arbitrarily. What he's doing is very humanitarian. So there's a difference between saying, oh, I want to end malaria, so I'm going to spend millions of dollars coming up with ideas, but you don't end malaria. He's actually saving people's lives. So last year, there's 3,000 people on this planet that will exist this year that may not have existed last year. So direct action is really the most fundamental force for change. People look at that and say, wow, that guy thinks deeply enough about that to commit his own resources and funds.
We're going to slowly take you about 10 at a time over to the other ship, okay?
What we've done here is really venture philanthropy. because we've taken risk. We went into a different area to prove a concept. Of course, we're not going to really find any EU government that just jumps over the fence and decides that a private initiative is better than a state initiative. So we can at least get initially them to recognize that we were successful and that this concept can be possibly taken on at an EU level. It's completely humanitarian. So I think that that is a potential solution that Europe can look at, saying, hey, we can sort of outsource this to an NGO. What did the U.S. do when they went into Iraq? They outsourced something that was controversial to people that they could just throw the blame on later on.
Chris would know. He worked with contractors during the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. It's only recently that he started personally pulling children out of the water and promoting the rescues online.
And by the way, yes, I might be the smartest guy in the room. And you know what? I'll be happy to talk about it and to advocate for this problem continuously because I am the smartest guy in the room. But just because you're the smartest guy in the room doesn't mean that you're trying to make a profit every moment. And MOAS is only going to continue to grow and until we're not needed anymore. And that day that we're not needed is the day that nobody is dying at sea anymore.
Since the MOAS operation began this spring, it's helped keep the migrant issue on the agenda by generating a number of news reports about its activities.
You need boats out there to save lives, to pick people out of the water. That should be the first priority.
And with the headline-grabbing tragedies of the early summer, the EU has had to take note. It finally expanded its border patrol operations to areas near the Libyan coast, where most rescues have to take place. They've already picked up 65,000 people out of the sea over the course of the summer. MOAS has rescued far fewer people, about 5,000 this year, but it's played an important role in getting the message out about the crisis. And until the turmoil in the Middle East and Africa ends, the crisis is likely to persist, which means that there'll be room on the high seas for activists and governments alike for a long time to come.